What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of I Moved the Setup Again podcast. No. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Not So Black and White podcast. This, I believe, is episode 19. We're almost to episode 20. That's a big thing because I do this every week. That's cool. I've been doing this for many weeks. Wow. That's cool. So, anyways, this is the podcast where we talk about not so boring music technology, music, more. We will talk about music more, and whatever the heck else I want to talk about. That being said, this is a new setup. It's not permanent, but here we are. The reason for the setup is I wanted to test out a new light thing that I had going on. So that we are doing. And because of that, I wanted to just test out some stuff. So, if you can see in the glasses, I just wanted to test out like a new grid thing. And so yeah, this is not the videography podcast, but I finally very happy with a bunch of things that I got for the business, which brings us to other things. So anyway, this week I had some sort of a meeting with a group that I was producing with, and they're a female duo led project by the name of, either you can call them There or THER, her, like it's There. And we had been working together for at least 2 months now, maybe a little over, back and forth, trying to figure out what to use for a project that they're doing, as they're going to do some live shows. And we had done it was a lot of work back and forth. And I think that we had sort of come to a head about like scheduling recently, and we had a few, I guess you could call it, disagreements on some things, as me being a record producer who, is more used to coming at things from scratch. They already had a lot of songs that they had already completed, and I was kind of coming in as a sort of a finalizing record producer. They like what I did on some projects, and I'm a big fan of the duo and their talent. They're super talented. I think that if they get with the right person and they get with the right group, that they're going to really go far, because I just think that the voice and the look, they definitely have what it is. So all that said, we parted ways this week, and we had quite a long discussion about the things that we were able to do and the things that they wanted expectation-wise. And, the hardest part about it was that I wanted to do the project, but so many other things get in the way. I think that people who know me know that the thing that I try to do the most is, if I'm going to do something, I want to commit to that thing full time. And coming off of doing the 5U project with noise engineering, and seeing on the horizon maybe some sort of a project with, I don't know if I can talk about it, but a software plug-in manufacturer, and thinking and, seeing what I want to do, and trying to decide what projects I can take on without being overwhelmed with work. It sort of all came to a head where I, unfortunately, just didn't have the time to invest as much as was required to do a good job for them. It would have required some amount of work in Ableton, which I just don't have time to get back into doing Ableton all the time, you know? And, even being a record producer is tough because, yeah, a group is paying me money to help them, but it's so subjective, and you're trying to bring I'm trying to bring my perspective, and I haven't produced. And I told them straight up, like, I haven't produced in. I hadn't produced a record for an artist that wasn't like me since 2015, because in 2016 is when the channel kind of got going, and the whole focus was on the channel and then me, dropping records. And so it's always been so hard, since I continually get people saying, like, hey, we want you to produce for us. And I'm just like, I can't, like, how much time do you think I actually have? And it's always, they think I have more time than I actually do. But, that's my fault, because number one, it's always good to make sure you set expectations out in the beginning. And I probably did a terrible job at listening to what the expectations were, and then taking those and internally seeing if I could emotionally handle what that was. And then number two, calendaring it and making sure that there was going to be the hours in the day to do it. Wow. That was weird. So, I didn't think or do all those things. And then it came to a head when we were trying to decide, well, how are we going to finish when I'm telling them I don't have enough time. I'm constantly saying I don't have time to do that, and they're constantly saying that they need these things. And it was unfortunately a bad fit. And I think that anyone who listens, who does this, who is even thinking about getting into doing more professional production for artists and things like that, first and foremost, you're probably going to be working a job, right? And you got to pay the bills. So I'm not saying don't do things for free, or I'm not saying just do things for money. I'm just saying that time is valuable, and if you cannot dedicate time to something, I don't think you should dedicate yourself to it for any amount of money, because you're going to burn out. You're going to neglect friends or family or responsibilities that you have. And those are the things that I felt I was running into. And so we let it go, and it was cool. We hugged it out. I love those guys. They said, they're so cool. I feel sad because I love them. They're so awesome. But anyway, so that was what was going on over the last week. I've definitely, thankfully had more time to like rest and think about some more projects that are going on now. I did what I usually do. I thought about doing a project and don't know if I'm going to go through and do it. I know that videos and stuff are extremely sporadic, but it's because it has to be that way for the quality stuff to come out. And also, like I already mentioned, the album is important, which we'll get into in a second. So, it's funny. I've recorded in my life many quote albums, right? I've done quite a few albums with bands. It's over on that wall there. First record I did with the label. That was way back in the day. So, first and foremost, the mindset for myself going from being a filmmaker, video guy, which I think YouTube is more than being like a music place. I don't. It's crazy to think like how like popular uh, YouTube is as a platform for content. Like it's just such a like insanely creative platform that is competitive with a lot of people, and you're not competing on your talent for being a musician. You're there's people who make videos, and people like me who like to tout as being some sort of a filmmaker, right? And I've done a few good videos. I've done some stuff like that, and the thing is, I have to always remember to change my mindset when I'm going from being like filmmaker guy to full on like musician. And that change is not hard, but the setting up for figuring out an album is it's different. The conceptualization is the beginning for me. And then, trying to remember like to just have pure fun with it and go with the emotion and not think about the concept all the time, but work within the concept. So when I think about this, when I was setting up today to do some stuff, just to test out some sounds and to play, number one biggest advice that I ever got when I was coming up was one, work with your mind always in the correct place when you're going to do something. So like if you're going to if one day it's going to be like, okay, we're laying down like guitars, like just because I'm a multi-instrumentalist and I'm playing keyboards, guitar, and bass, I always have to like remember like to change my mindset like a lot of times, and focus on what I'm doing in the moment, because it takes a certain amount of like mind, I guess you could call like mind clarity to really focus on like doing a certain type of instrument from moment to moment. So number one for me is always like right now is like the setup time. Setup process is all about getting projects set up that are going to be easy to go. Just open it and it works. Everything MIDI and all the other stuff's like hooked up and ready to go, right? Number two, check the tuning of the instruments. Like if we need to switch strings and stuff, I'm going to do that like a week out of like actually starting like any like solid tracks. Like I'm going to make sure all my guitars are going to be tuned right and my bass is going to be tuned right when we are going to go into it. I don't want to have to be in the middle of a song and be like, oh man, the strings aren't tuned. So I actually got on the bass today and was like, oh, the E string, the low E is, I need to change my strings. I didn't change them before I did an album last time, but I have some new bass strings that I need to change out, and because it's not tuning right. So I think my guitar is pretty good. We'll see. But setting up all the technical stuff so that when I'm in the creative zone, or when you guys are in the creative zone, you're just moving seamlessly from one thing to another thing without being stifled within the process. You know what I'm saying? So for me, number one is getting all the technical difficulties worked out, not necessarily getting everything hooked up the way I want, but like making sure that any technical speed bump that's going to come is going to be either easily traversed, or I'm going to wipe it out right now before we get creative, And that includes like number one thing I want to say for a lot of people in small bedroom environments, or small apartment environments, or small house environments, rooms. Number one thing is to remember that your instrument, is really, where you need to start if you want good sound. And it's always at the source. And I think for me, sometimes I was messing with not knowing my stuff well enough, and there was, a lot of hum or hiss or extra noise, or, it wasn't well cabled, or I had a bad cable, and all of these things are gonna just get in the way of you creating. And me making an album, I know a lot of people watch and they're more interested in like me and my experience with like gear and stuff, but using it to make records is how I learned how to do most everything. Is you know I've, I guess, grown a following because of being a filmmaker, but my obviously everyone knows that so much of what I've uh, kind of grown to be or learned or whatever, all that comes from all of the time working within the studios and all that experience with artists. And the sound for me is so important, more important than the video, um, because I think most people will forgive the video, but you're there to look at a piece that's creating sound. So right now, this week, I'm just going through a lot of things. I'm making some presets in Cubase. Um, I'm going to probably check some tuning things with my Prophet 6. And also, I want to bring this up again, like, VSTs and things like that are just like so much easier. I actually do a lot of work with presets and working off presets. And, the hardest thing about doing things out of the box is that, yes, if I'm going to sit here and say my true feelings about certain things, the Prophet 6 sounds better than any virtual analog Prophet 5 Dave Smith analog polysynth clone available. It just fits correctly into the track. It works right. The tuning is fairly good. You have to futz with it a little bit, but I'm not going to go and say just because using a VST is easier, I want to use some VST, because that would be a lie. I don't just want to use a VST. I want to use what I think is going to sound the best, especially in a studio environment. Now, if I'm out playing a show live, temperature's an issue. We'll see. You can't, not saying you don't want to, but I don't want to use a analog synth live unless it's a specific synth. So when we're talking about like the Prophet 6, it takes a good, I'm going to say 15 minutes. I think maybe someone says 10, but I'm going to give it 15 good minutes to make sure it's in the right tuning before I even think about playing it. So setting up that, making sure that's in tune when I make an album, checking all my like rack equipment. I don't have a ton of rack equipment. I think that can get a little bit over like blown. People like wanting more and more like rack stuff. I used to have a lot of rack stuff, but right now I just have a channel strip, basically like a Neve channel strip, like a preamp, EQ, and compressor. That's kind of like that's the channel strip that I use for a certain sound, more of like a colored sound. And then I have my Focusrite ISA 1, which I would highly suggest to anybody trying to get into the preamp game. I think it's too damn big for what it does. The ISA 2 is one rack unit, and somehow it can have two channels. It's missing some of the functionality, but all that said, the ISA 1 is really, like, if we want like a clean Nevis channel, like a cleaner Neve channel, I love the ISA 1. It's a Rupert Neve design. The the other one, I really like push people to realize that the price of things doesn't always say the quality of something, and that, I personally don't have anything in my rack that costs over $500. I have my Steinberg MR, what the heck, MR 816 CSX that since I've had that thing since, like, I don't even know if I want to, probably, oh my goodness, I don't even know, maybe like 2012 I've had that. Still rock solid, works great. You don't need to upgrade stuff. It's weird to me how much stuff people have. So yeah, I mean, I literally have, like, I don't know, two kind of channel strips. I'm a fan of Golden Age project stuff. I think it's the right price for the right quality, and it sounds very good as long as you get a quality unit. Sometimes the QC can be tough, but I absolutely have only had one bad unit from them, and other than that, every other one is great and sounds great. You know, all you want to do, I think, is make sure the sound goes in sounding good. Like, that's just my philosophy. That's why I really like the ISA one. It sounds amazing and it's super clean. Like, I'm not saying it's can't get colored ish, but I also have the LA3A clone, and it's funny because people were like, "Oh, wouldn't you want the LA2A clone of the LA2A?" And what are you familiar with? Me coming up in the studio times, I was super familiar with the LA3A. Like, that was my, like, bass compressor. I know the LA3A. So when I'm getting everything I get, I want to know, and I want to know it because I'm familiar with it, right? The ISA one, I just know that it has a very focused sound. If you put something into it, the sound's going to be super focused, right? And then I know the sound of the LA3A, right? It's going to be round, but also it can stay, like, focused with a little bit of harmonics. So that's why I use it. I know the sound of that. I know the sound of, like, the Neve preamp. I know what that's going to sound like. So that's why I have that. And of course, the Valley People Dynamite, the king right there. So I'm always like, don't fill your studio with too much crap that you don't know. I know everything here. I think I'll probably use the Mother 32. What the heck did I say? I meant the grandmother on the project. I don't know if I'll use it more than the Sub 37 because I know the Sub 37. Like, I'm just saying, like, I don't want to, like, be all over, like, new stuff when I know I want to have a certain sound. So all that said, like, we're gonna do some more behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, uh, you know, that's what you can check out on the Patreon. More behind the scenes videos coming soon. Probably starting within the week. I'll give you guys an update. Just some formalities that have to go over. So yeah, I don't know if the theme of the podcast. I don't know what the theme of this podcast was, but thanks again for watching, guys. Listening to the podcast, and catch you guys next week. Bye.